What's up, everybody? Welcome to a guide on how to play Fafnir. So starting off with the Faf build, some of these items can kind of change with however you're feeling, but typically what I like to do is I like to go Benevolence into Prophetic. Fafnir is super good at stacking Prophetic Cloak, and this item is just one of the best late game items in the game. I mean, it just really can't be beat. You're getting 40 prots. Sorry, actually, you're getting 70 prots from this item because of the 30 aura, and then you're going to get damage mitigation, right, depending on how many prots you have. Also, what's nice is Fafnir's passive allows him to gain 35 protections, and so this actually is going to add towards the prophetic stack, right, to his stacks, because you need at least 600 to get the full value of prophetic, 600 protections, and because of his passive and how you can build him, you're going to be hitting over that 600 mark. The next time I like to do here is going to be a Deso. You don't always have to do this. If you're behind, I would recommend actually not going Deso and probably just going right into Stone of Binding. But if the game is neutral, like you're even, or of course if you're ahead, Deso's super nice, allows you to get a lot of damage online, and it just gives you CDR as well. And because you're Fafnir, you're super safe, right? You have one of the longest leaps in the game, you have Dragon Transformation, and then you can leap again. And of course you have your passive for extra protections. Because of all that, you can afford to go Deso, a damage item. But again, if you're behind, just go Binding. If they have a lot of healers too, Divine Ruin is completely fine. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it applies to you and your teammates. If you 2 your teammate, such as this, I'm 2ing myself, of course, but if you 2 your teammate, they're also going to get the Divine proc, so it's really good against healers. Next, I'm just going to go Binding. Binding is also going to give me a lot of prots. In fact, this entire tree is pretty crazy. If they have shields, erosion here is fine too, or you could just go both. But Binding's going to give you a lot of prots, and it's also going to give you even more pen. So if you think about it like this, when you're level 20, Binding gives you 20 pen. You're getting 15 pen from Deso. You're literally getting 35 pen from these 2 items. And you're Fafnir, so you're already doing a ton of damage. And actually what people don't think about with Fafnir is Fafnir's stun in his dragon form, like his 1, reduces protections of the enemy that you hit and nearby enemies next to them within the pulse radius by 20%. So you just have insane amounts of damage unlocked. The next I would go is Spirit Robe. This could be Spirit Robe, this could be Magi's Cloak, completely up to you. The reason why I like either of these is because they give you CDR and they give you protections. Easy peasy, you love CDR on characters like Fafnir. You get it from the Deso, you get it from this, you're already at 20%. That's super nice to have. Magi's is really good if they have a lot of CC, especially when you're Dragon Transforming. You get that bubble after Dragon Transform, so they can't lock you down, kind of like this. Right, people love to lock you down after you Dragon Transform, but here you have a bubble, so you're CC immune for a little bit. However, I just like going Spirit Robe quite a bit. It gives me the CCR, gives me a little bit more protections, and I also get the damage mitigation passive. I do recommend going Heroism most of the time. Compassion's still fine, but Heroism, honestly, you're going to be a little aggressive when you play Fafnir, okay? That's just kind of how you play him. You can kind of play him in the mid-fight between backline and frontline, but you can engage with stuns, and you're going to be a little aggressive, especially with some damage. So going Heroism, having an aggressive shield for allies that get CC next to you, that to me just always kind of feels and even sounds better than going Compassion. So I like going Heroism. Heroism's not going to give you any protections, but again, we got Prophetic, we got our passive. Our passive is going to help make up for the fact that Heroism only gives us HP. And then finally on the last item, it really is kind of up to you. I recommend going an HP item. So Abyssal Stone, Erosion if they have shields, that kind of stuff. Because Heroism scales based off your HP. So the more HP you have, the bigger the shield that you give to allies is going to be. Right now we're rocking about 3,700 without green buff. You know, if we picked up a green buff, we'd probably be at about 4k right now, which is really good. So I recommend just going some sort of health item here. It's going to give me prots, it's going to give me health, and it's honestly a pretty decent passive. I think this item's kind of underrated. So I definitely would recommend going to Abyssal here. If you're having trouble sieging, say for example your soul laner wanted to be an asshole and go a mage solo because that's what people do, you're gonna have trouble sieging. because you're the only tank. Emperor's Armor is perfect for that, pretty cheap, gives you a lot of HP, gives you more procs. Another little tip here is, one thing that people don't realize is that, so the max cap on protections is actually 325 of each, right? So if you go to protections here under the stats screen, you'll see that the cap is 325. However, because Fafnir's passive is protections, his passive actually allows him to overcap. So he can overcap 35 protections over the cap, which is super, super nice. So don't feel afraid, or don't be afraid of like hitting that cap mark, because Fafnir will go above it and you'll get a little bit more prots. Now they are really DR'd. DR'd means like diminishing returns, so the protections don't add up to nearly as much. I'm not gonna go like super into it. If you guys want a full depth video, I'll be happy to make one. But they're still gonna be counted for something. They're gonna give you a little bit extra damage mitigation, so it's really, really good. So if there's one thing Fafnir does really well, it's actually just annoying the enemy. Fafnir is like a really big nuisance, and he's actually really, really bad at clearing. Like, you're not really going to get pressure with Fafnir unless your ADC has a lot of pressure. So one thing I like to do is really just kind of barrel shove the enemy ADC, because you are really tanky. So I just like to CC the enemy ADC a lot, and just try to prevent them from clearing. This will help your ADC clear a little bit quicker, if possible, but if not, don't worry about losing pressure. Fafnir's main objective isn't really to get pressure. He can't really do that. He doesn't have good clear. So just try to be as big of a nuisance as possible, and just kind of like play it out from there. So the way Faf's kit is made actually allows him to be super, super annoying, as I mentioned earlier. He's got multiple leaps, and he's really, really tanky, especially from an earlier standpoint in the game. And so you want to use his kit and use this tankiness and really run around the map on their side of the map and just annoy the enemy. Get information for your team. Tell your team where the jungler's at. Follow the jungler around. Go to their buffs. Try to steal their buffs. Here's a really nice little tip. Faf's 3, his disarming ability, his leap, is really, really good at stealing buffs. It's actually better than his hammer. His hammer can be easily body blocked, but his 3 disarms the enemy so they can't auto, and it also does a big chunk of damage to the buff itself. So try using his 3 for secure rather than just trying to rely on the hammer. However, as much fun as this may be, you don't want to get too excited doing this, because you can get lost in the time of pretty much you running around the map and messing with the enemy and forget to farm. Next thing you know, you're like 3 levels down. You don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure you do everything in like a balanced sense. You want to run at them, get information from your team, annoy them, try to buff steal, while at the same time also going back to your teammates and farming the lane and making sure you're caught up in and staying even with their support. So in my opinion, Fafnir actually has like a really good team fight. He's got a few things going for him. The first thing is that he's a really good initiator. And what I mean by that is that he can start a fight with his hammer, and then his front line, his solo or jungler, can actually follow up off that. Same thing with his back line. So that's really nice to have as a support. The other thing I really like about Faf is he plays in the middle of the fight. So you have your back line that sits further back, and then you have your front line that plays up. Fafnir likes to play kind of in between that. The thing about Faf is that he likes to peel for his backline, especially against characters that are like AA junglers, auto attack junglers. He's really good against those characters, such as Kali, Bakasura, Nemesis, those kinds of characters that rely off their auto attacks. Fafnir actually counters super, super heavily with his disarm. The other thing Fafnir does is obviously plays in the front line. So from the middle of the fight, you can jump to the front line, and then you can be aggressive with your CC, right? If you guys are just owning the enemy opposition, you jump in and you just have insane lockdown with 2 stuns in Dragon Form, and giving your allies attack speed and that extra core state. Sometimes that damage even being enough to solo the enemy. And that's all there is to it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed the Fafnir guide. And if you didn't, please consider subscribing. Also, try to give it a like for more exposure. And of course, leaving a comment in the comment section. Maybe things that you didn't like about it that you want to see differently, or characters that you want to see in the future. I'd be happy to do them. But guys, thank you so much. Until next time.
Especially Dashboard. That man was a maniac. I had to say less than 100 health, and he jumps back in against 3 people to set up for Chinfu and Mando Warrior to clean up the game.
Like, I called it at the 5-minute mark. I'll call it again at the 30. Dashboard was owning, man. That was a magnificent performance from the Fafnir.